You were talking about knee-high grape.
I think there's some in here, right here.
There is.
So
So you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, did you hear kind of a clunk?
yes, I did.
That means the gate should be released. Now, most of them have twist off, but if you want to try it that way. The other thing is, young people haven't drank out of a bottle.
You're welcome.
Have you ever used a machine like that before?
Yeah, I've been here a few times.
You've been here before, okay.
But this is the only place like
That's a 62 model.
I bet they've never seen nothing like that.
No, that's pretty cool.
So you got more that you're going to set up over
About 18
time.
of them. And they'll be free, and they can just come in and play. And that plays 40 games right there.
Well, this little setup you've had out here is incredible for all of them. They make me come by here.
And that never closes. They're all the time.
They always ask, can we go to look at
Is this the first time you got to come in?
Yes. I checked the door a couple times, closed a lot, but today I'm like, I saw lights, I'm like, I just want to look in it.
Yeah.
Because I'm so impressed with
It'll be open, and all these will be running eventually.
Oh, wow.
And there was a lot more in here, but I had to move all these out to for you to have room to walk, because it was. I have 2 more rooms of these. I had over 2,000 machines at one time, and I've sold a lot of the copies off. But there's 7 more buildings, and they're full. But I made a dance floor, a space, and stuff like this, so now it can be used. I should have done this. a long time ago and never done the museum, because this is what has become popular.
Oh, yeah, this would
The
be.
non-alcoholic bar is what's done.
This is going to be like very.
It's going to be
popular.
yeah, because
The happening thing.
museums today are going to have to reinvent themselves if they're going to survive.
And this is a great way to do it because you
It is.
enjoy everything and interact.
And they don't remember any of these machines, but they'll come to these ones because they know the soda.
Oh yeah, they love the soda
They love
stuff.
sodas.
And you've got
And it's better
gun
tasting.
smoke and stuff.
I know.
I love that too.
Hello everyone, this is John Ward with the Appalachian Channel, and I'm in Granite Falls, North Carolina with Alan Huffman, who has one of the largest collection of soda machines in the world, I guess, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you started, I saw a picture back here earlier, Joe took me around before you got here, and you was maybe about 3 years old, you got your first Coke machine. And this passion started from that, I guess, huh?
Yes, it was a fountain, but I was only 3 years old, so
3?
Yeah. But I started when I was in my 20s.
In your 20s?
When I was
collecting?
21, and I started with one machine and just ran them out in service and let them sell soda.
Do you still have that machine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I still have that, and I ran them, and within the first year and a half, I had 12 machines.
So you mean you ran them, you put them out to what?
Put them out and let them sell glass bottles.
Oh, how about that?
And then ran that vending business up until a lot of the machines, the older they get, the more desirable they get, they start disappearing on me. So,
oh,
yeah? I couldn't leave them out on location anymore.
So they'd get stolen, people would take them. How about that?
They'd get stolen, and I couldn't leave them out anymore, so I moved them in, and they've been stored in this building. And we had a museum in this building and ran it, and it just, it was not real popular with the younger generation because they didn't remember the machines. And so we flipped it around and turned it into a non-alcoholic bar. And now they love it. They're our best customers.
So I see that. You're working just kind of new for you. It's just started out in the last little bit, Joel was telling me.
Yep.
And so you was telling about these, how you turn these into bars, these old.
Well, these were bars. These were actually operated. Those are ice makers. And that makes flake ice. And I rebuild those. They have a worm shaft in them, and the water goes up into the cylinder, and it gets really cold, and it will shave the ice off. It builds the ice on the walls and shaves it off, and you get like a really, really soft ice, and it spits it out the chute. And that machine will run about 6 years, and then you'll have to rebuild it. But those were used by Coca-Cola in commercial diners. If you'd go sit at the bar, there would be one in the actual bar, and she would scoop your ice out and then pass you your cup right here, and then that is the fountain. And that's both versions of the fountain. One is a Cornelius, and one is a Vendo. And I've changed the lights in them. See, they turn color now when I speak, but they were just white. But they look like the tail fin of a car from the 1950s. They're real hard to find because the lenses always turn up and they're all cracked up. And I just, in 30 years, I found 2 of them. And that ice machine has a platform out there to mount that fountain. And the ice machine was produced by Queen, which later became Scotsman. And you pretty much make your parts for it to keep it running. But it makes the best ice. And I don't run them because even if I rebuild them, which I've rebuilt them, it's a lot of work to rebuild them. And then these run with belt-driven motors. So you have like a rubber belt in there. So when they run, they'll shake themselves out into the floor. So they're loud. So I haven't been running them. But that was part of the bar. And then this right here was part of the bar. And this bar's by Fishman. And then you would have your carbonated water. And then your water would be there, and you could actually mix your soda and stir it, or you could make your float. You could make your root beer float right there, or your banana split. And that's what that was used for. And then the machine over there with the games piled up on it, that actually has a refrigerator on the back side where your drinks would be stored down in this area here, and then there's a refrigerator on the back side where you would keep meat and cheese and bread, and the man that owns the store could make you a sandwich, and you would get your drink, and there's a stainless steel counter there, and he would make your sandwich right there where that scale's setting, and you could get a bologna and cheese sandwich and a drink. That's a really early piece for Pepsi that has the lighted sign on. I have those over there which have a double dot between the Pepsi and the cola, which would be even older, but that crown lights up. And then this is a one-door Victor. That is, they made 200 and I think 69 of these things, and that's just one door. And there's, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 left that I've been able to count. But over here, that company went out of business in 57, and they made a machine over here. They made 50 of them, and it's sitting over here, and they made 50 of these things. This is, I'm believing, unless there's been another one found, this is one of 9 left of 50, and it has a beacon that goes on it that's sitting over there on the other side that I've got to put on it, but it sets up here and it mounts across and it says hot dogs, and the beacon says grilled, and it rotates around and has a lighted sign that goes on it. It has a hot dog cooker here, and on the other side it's got a bun steamer and a mustard and ketchup area for your condiments and a cutting board, and the Coca-Colas would have been here. And then National provided the cash register for it. Dixie provided the cup dispenser. That one has every piece to it, even the Dixie cup dispenser, and it has the original cash register, and it does work. And it has the sink. The sink had a drain stopper. It's got the drain stopper for the sink, which is amazing that it hasn't been lost. That machine right there that has the doors on it is extremely rare, and that is the first actual mass-produced, I'm guessing, Visicooler. So when you walk in a convenience store now and all the doors are glass, you can see the product in there. That was built by an elevator company, and it is the first Visicooler right there. And there may be 5 or 6 of those left, but the doors are actual plastic, so they did not survive. And it's amazing that is still intact. And then now I was telling you about ice makers. See, this is all the different sizes. Here's 1, 2, 3. See, they made them different sizes, different size restaurants. This is a Canada Dry held soda, and if you look down inside it, the bottles, you see, you couldn't keep cardboard in these things because the cardboard would get wet and it would stick to the floor. This thing has cast, which you don't usually see these because people would throw those away. That has cast areas that would hold the bottle upright, and that way they won't clank together. Now I'm gonna put some free arcade games in here, and this plays like 40 games, and they can come in and the kids can come in here and drink a soda and play Atari or whatever. That machine there, I've got to put power on it, but it plays instruments. It takes I had a fella come in here one time and said that is equivalent of about a 5-piece band, and it plays. It's called an orchestron, and it plays all those instruments. It's caught in the 1980s, actually in 1989, because that was the last year. That's the last roll that I have for it. I have several rolls for it, but the newest roll I have for it's 89. So it plays. It plays about 20 songs from movies in 1989. And I've got to get it fixed. But I mean, I've got to get power on it to run it, and we'll run it once in a while. And then the jukebox over there is a Rockola Rocket. It came out of Myrtle Beach. And the last year it operated was 1966, but I've got it working, and it does work, and it's got the records in it, and we'll probably run it too. But it's original, it's old, and it does work. And you put money in it, and it'll raise up and give you a drink. And I mean, not a drink, raise up and play the record. It's got 100 records in it because they're sandwiched together, so you get the best side. You don't have to play the B side. So the 245s are together on the tray, and it plays the record upside down and spins it backwards. So it will raise the record. See, there's 2 needles. There's a needle on top and a needle on bottom. So if you're playing the back side of the record, it can't flip the record. It brings the record over, brings it up above the needle, and sets upward and spins it backwards to play side B. But I like that style because unlike the ones that flip it out and put it on the platform, they scratch the records. This won't scratch the records. This one brings the record over, sets it in the tray. Tray comes over and gets it, goes back, and it works better. Don't get any scratches. So, because a lot of these other older jukeboxes, you can't use them because it just rips your 45s up. And these are this water fountain. That is a Cavalier C51, and like if you were working for Coca-Cola and you needed to put a machine in service, you'd go in an area like those little gas stations, and there's not room for a soda machine, and he would just tell you that you can't put one in because he doesn't have space for it. And then you would talk the fella into taking his water fountain out, and you could take the man's water fountain out, put the Pepsi machine or the Coke machine where the water fountain was, and then you've gained your space. And then he's getting the water fountain for free. And he's a mechanic, and at that time he might have thought, well, you know, I don't drink Coca-Cola, I drink water. So you give him a free water fountain knowing that you're going to sell more Coke, then he's going to drink free water. So that's where that came in. This is a Taylor water fountain. They made that, and they mounted them on Coke machines to try to get the account. But yeah, that was a Victor cooler grill. Fixes hot dogs, holds, that's the C14. That one holds 14 hot dogs at one time. And you can see the cups over there in the Dixie cup dispenser. See it sitting there. And it does work. And then this is a Narco bar. And I'll show you something. You see how that Victor bar is rounded. See, this is 54 through 57. You see how rounded it is. Okay. But you know how it rounds. We'll see over the years stuff has, you know, it gets square, and they get rid of the round. And you can see here where this one, I think this was probably a 56, 57. See what happens to it. See, it's not quite as round as it used to be. And then over time, these will get flatter, square, easier to build. Kind of look like a Volvo. It gets real square. That's the baby one. That's the smallest ice maker that Scotsman made. And I just put it there and put that cash register on it. This is a 4-door. It's a 4-door Victor. These were all bars. And you could order extra wooden bars to go on top of, and people would sit here with bar stools and eat at these things. And then it would store the drinks. That's a 2-door. I showed you a 1-door. That's a 2-door. It's very rare. And I'll just let people sit there and let them eat a pizza or whatever they're going to do. This is that hot dog cooker that I showed you. This is the C10. This is the original hot dog cooker that goes with it. See, it just runs 10, and that's a 14. Holds 10 hot dogs at one time. This machine here is very rare. It actually was built by a company, Mills novelty company before they went out of business. They went out of business after the war and become Mills International. It actually gives you, put your money in. It was used in theaters. Put your 5 cents in there, and it would give you a cup of Coke for 5 cents, and it would drop the cup. That's very, very rare. This is rare. This machine here's rare. This machine took 10 cents for a Coke, which was very expensive, but see, this machine only holds 14 Cokes. That's all it holds. This would go in the CEO of the company. If you were a CEO of a big company, Coca-Cola would come to you and they would say, hey, if you'll let us have your plant floor sales, we'll put this in your office. And some CEOs said that, you know, they would give, like if you were a CEO and you were running a big company, Coca-Cola come along and said, hey, we want to put these machines out on the plant floor for the workers to use. And you'd say, that's fine. What can you do for me? And Coke would say, hey, we'll put one in your office and put Cokes in it. And so the CEO could request this one. This one is, these machines were built by Cavalier in Tennessee. See right here, this one here, the CEO would have a key. He could leave it unlocked, and if you went in his office for a meeting, he'd get you a free Coke out of there. But some CEOs didn't want to give away Cokes. They didn't want to have to pay for them. So right here, they put a coin mech on the front of the same machine. So this one took a dime. So if you were visiting with him and he didn't want to give you a drink, you had to put 10 cents in there. And then you turn this crank, and it gives you one drink. But it only holds 14 drinks. That's all it'll hold. And see what we did, we just took these machines. Those are from the 60s and the 70s, and so we've lined them up, so now they'll be the bar. That'll be the bar where you can walk down. And so we can have a bartender walk through here, and if you see a soda that you want, we'll pull the soda and just let you pay for it.
So you're going to put sodas in these?
No, these will probably not operate. These will probably operate these. Some of these all do work. This one here works, but I don't want to have to pay the power bill on all these running, and I don't need this much space for cold drinks. So we'll just, this one right here, this would run my power bill up a couple $100 a month. So I don't want to do that. So this has a 1/2 horsepower compressor on it. This is the largest machine that Victor made. It holds a lot of drinks. It holds a lot of drinks. This would be for somebody, a store that was doing a lot of lunch sandwiches or something like that. These holes that are in this thing, at one time it would have had a counter on it. And see, somebody's taking it off. But at one time, there would have been a counter on this thing, and it would have stretched out over there, and you'd had bar stools. And some of them that show up have the counters on them. See, they still have the counters on. Here. Yeah, see, and the counter would have went out there on it. Some of them show up with counters on them. Some of them show up with original counters on them. Now, these are all from, these machines here are what's called half-lit. They don't make machines like this anymore. We went from the round top to the square tops. And these were push buttons. Now see that, I told you the first machine I found in Columbia, South Carolina, it's right there. It's right there on the left, the white one. That's a 96. And see, it's round top. You're looking at about 1957, 56, 57. It has the gravity fed door.
Now is this the first machine you bought? Or?
That's number one. That's the first one I bought. That's the first one I ever found. It was found, that was in a clothing store in Columbia. It started with a C, and I don't know if I can remember it or not. It was Compton's or something, but there was a clothing store in Columbia, South Carolina, and that was in that store, and I found it in 1989 in that store, and it's got the sticker on the side of it. But that's called a Cavalier 96. It was built in Tennessee. Holds 96 bottles, runs 12 flavors. You put your money in that thing, and it lights up half a Coke, because Coca-Cola didn't want to. They didn't really want to sell anything but Coke, and they didn't want to promote anything but Coke. So when you put your money in there, it's got what's called a point of sale light to encourage you to buy a Coke. They don't want you buying something that's not their brand. And see, that carries 12 different flavors. So put that in a location. They really just wanted to sell Coke, because up until 1955, they just had the baby Coke, and I believe in 55 they invented the big Coke. And then in 58, they came out with Fanta Strawberry. And then in 1960, they invented Sprite. And that's when they started branching out into other flavors. But they still wanted you to buy a Coke. And then a lot of these machines, like the gates at the top of the machine, actually say have a Coke on the gate. See, the top 5 gates, if you open the door, say have a Coke. So the route man would put Cokes in the top 5. And at eye level. These are what's called half-lits. They have motors in them. You put your money in there, you push that, and it drops it out. And see, now they have what's called a full lit that goes all the way to the ground. Those Sundrop is a drink that we have in our area. I think it started in Huntsville, Alabama, and we had a plant in Granite Falls that had a distributorship on it. And it really sells good in our area. In some areas, Mountain Dew sells better. But those are Sundrop machines from Granite Falls. This is a Lunchomat food court right here behind you. And I think I figured it up. It will dispense you a cup of coffee. It'll dispense a cup of soup. It will give you a barbecue sandwich. It'll give you a bag of chips. I think that you could possibly buy a barbecue sandwich, a bag of chips, a cup of coffee, and a cup of soup, and have less than 60 cents in it. I think if you added up the prices on this and you bought all of that to eat, you would spend about 55 to 60 cents. And that would have been put in a break room.
What year did you say that's from?
I don't know. I don't know. It's pretty old. I don't know. I don't know the year.
That's a big piece. Did you find it pretty close to you here? Or?
No, a friend of mine found that, and we were going to redo it, and it just is an absolute nightmare inside. I mean, it's all in there, but the cost of redoing that would exceed its value by a lot. So I don't even want to think about the time it would cost. I've taken on some projects and done some projects, and they just take too long. So it's better just to leave it like that. It's all in there. All the guts are in there. Everything, all the stainless steel, the areas where the soup stays, and all of that. And another thing, you couldn't really run it today. You'd have to clean this thing out all the time because the soup is actually not in a package. The soup is actually contained in stainless steel containers in there, so you'll mess around and poison somebody. This actually would have to have somebody come in here and stay with it all the time because the coffee and all of that in there, it mixes it. It's got it all in stainless steel containers. It's really an early piece. Some of these fountains that we have in here, the syrup in the fountains is actually stored in the fountains.
So they'd come out down here?
That's probably it would dispense the cans out of there, and then here would dispense. You could dispense barbecue sandwiches and stuff out of here.
So it's got a tray here.
Yeah.
It looks like here.
But now
your coffee would come.
Yeah,
down.
that's right. The coffee would come there. I'm not sure if it dispenses anything in there or not, or that's a place to put. No, it does. It would have dispensed something in there. Okay, you know what? Your change might have come back here in some of these areas, and then it would have dispensed it down there. I have this. I've had this machine a while. I just haven't redone it. It's just too much money. But anyway, it's cool. But you couldn't operate it because it's not safe. It's the health standards have changed. So I have to operate closed container stuff. Now this is neat. This is what I was telling you. See, this is a Visicooler, first Visicooler, and it was for Pepsi.
What year that might date back to? The 50s?
55, maybe. This is a milk vendor. They made different sizes of these. That's a milk vendor. And they had little signs on top of them that would go on top of them. This popcorn machine come out of the main theater across the street. It runs off 240 though. It's and you can buy a popcorn machine so cheap now. But that I tell you, there was a fella in town, and his name was Doc Jones. And he, that theater right beside us was the old theater in town. And we had a store, and we put in car radios. And when I was younger, and we sold a lot of car radios. And the kids had money, and they would buy car radios. So, well, he had a car that just had one speaker in the top of it. And it was, that was all the car had. It was a 4-door, big old boat-looking car. Paint wore off of it, but now he had a lot of money, but he just wouldn't spend it. And he came up and wanted a radio, and we had a radio that was sold for $15, and it was the knob style radio. And we would sell 99% of them to used car dealers because they don't want to spend any money on the radio because they're only going to get so much for their used car. So they'd send their car up, we'd put that $15 radio in there, put an antenna on it, put a speaker on it. They would pay us for putting it in $50, they're out the door. They can sell the car and let the customer worry about the radio. Well, Doc Jones come up, and the radio actually had a string in it, so you'd turn the knob, and the string would do the dial. That's how old. You're looking at something from the 80s. And so anyway, Doc Jones come up. He said, hey, I need a radio for this car. And of course, the car took knob styles. And I said, well, Doc Jones, you don't want this radio. It's not really that good. You can only pick up about 3 or 4 stations, and you're going to lose it going down there. He said, I don't care. Just need something to fill the hole. And so I'm putting it in, and he's sitting with me in the car, and he starts getting. He says, this is taking you a while. How much is this costing me? I said, well, you're going to have $50 in it, maybe. I says, when we're all done, you're going to have $50. And he said, well, that's a lot. And I'm thinking, that's not a lot, because I have kids come and spend $400 on Pioneer radios. That's not a lot. He said, would you trade something? Can I trade you out of it? Would you trade a popcorn machine? And I'm thinking, I don't need a popcorn machine. You know, I'm thinking one of those Black & Decker air pop things he's got or something. I'm thinking, this is going nowhere. But I'm getting the radio put in, and he said, well, I'll trade you a popcorn machine for it, but he said, you're going to have to get some of your friends to come and help move it. And I'm thinking, wow. I said, well, okay, I'll take you up on that. And so I got me a couple buddies, and he walked me to this building over here. And I had never been in it because he had it locked up. He had ran a disco out of it in the 70s, and it was the old theater in town. Go down the basement, and there this thing sits. And he said, I used it. He said, I used it back when, it's a Manley is who made it. And he said, I used it back in the day. And he said, we ran it for the disco. Well, I get it over here, and I opened this drawer. And I was amazed. That is butter. You're looking at a stick of butter. That's the stick of butter. And you wonder, it's been in there non-refrigerated, and it's still there in its stick form. You can take it out. It's not molded. It's got, this is insulation, but that is a stick of butter. Look at that. And it's that's solid butter, and it's gone nowhere. So you can imagine eating that. But I left it in there, and but it's in that non-refrigerated door, and he didn't even refrigerate his butter. He was popping his popcorn and leaving his butter just in a drawer, and putting it in the melter for the popcorn. It wasn't even in the refrigerator. And I just, it's hard to me imagine that, because today you leave butter out, you throw it away, but back then he just left it in there.
How about that?
I thought that was crazy.
So this is the backside of this machine here. It's got a lot of different...
Yeah, I just laid some cords up on it because we were just playing with it. But see, everything's going to have to be wired. We were just running some lamps and stuff, but everything's going to have to be wired on it. But it would have held toppings. Has a 3-bin sink. But see, it wouldn't be something that you'd use today, because you see, you'd have to store all the toppings in these containers. So you'd have to wash these every night. You couldn't just leave this stuff out here like this. You see, now you leave it in the jar in the refrigerator. But I'm going to do, closed container soda like that. Something that's in a glass, and do that, and that'll work good. That's an old dairy box right there that would vend a drink.
I notice you've got sodas sitting on top of all these machines.
Yeah, these will carry. These, I don't have enough holes on the front porch to carry all of these, but these machines in here will carry these. So they'll be able to come in, and each one of these machines will hold about 14 different drinks. And then they'll be able to come in and put their money in here just like they do outside, because there's about 150, 160 running outside, and we rotate them. And they'll be able to come in here and do the same thing. This right here had a... This machine came out of Columbia, South Carolina, and what's neat about it is it has a peanut dispenser on the side of it. So you see, you would get your Coca-Cola, and you could get you a handful of peanuts to put in your Coke. I don't know if you've heard of that before. I'm sure you have. Yeah. But you would put your money in that, and you would get a handful of peanuts, and you could put them in the Coke. And a lot of people did that. But what's so funny is, if you'll look on the sign, it says, guaranteed worst in town. And that is not a joke. This is Cromer's. I don't even know if they're still in business, but they were downtown Columbia. And the Mr. Cromer, there was a sign, and it was hanging on the front of the building, and it said, guaranteed worst in town. And I asked, back in the 80s, it was still there, and I asked one of the ladies that knew what was going on, and she said that he set up a cart or had a store downtown Columbia, South Carolina, and sold these peanuts. And a man opened up on the opposite side of the street and put a sign up that said, I have the best peanuts in town. So everybody that had been buying Mr. Cromer's peanuts said, well, that means you have the worst. If he's got the best in town, you've got the worst peanuts in town. You should get you a sign that advertises that you have the worst peanuts in town. And so he said, okay. So he went and got a sign, and I seen it, and it hung on. They still had it. It was neon, and it was hanging out there, and it said, guaranteed worst in town. And when he hung that sign out, everybody that came to town said, well, I don't want to try the best peanuts. I want to see why he's got the worst peanuts in town. So he did more business than the other guy, and the other guy went to business.
That's a good story.
So that's they actually told me that story, and I found this machine. It was leaned up in a trailer, and it had that on it, and I thought that is just too cool. So I bought that machine. It was before the internet. Somebody called me and told me they had it, but it come out of Columbia. And see, there was a Coke bottling plant that was still operating in Columbia that was on the back streets, and it's been moved now. See that right there? That is a Sprite bottle. And see, it's faded out. See where it says here, taste the tingling taste? See, that was done. That's Sprite. It's faded. The sun is faded, but that's what that was. That is that's a player piano from 1913. Plays rolls. I took the front off of it because the kids like to watch it play, and I've got to get power on it, but it plays good. And it's had all the bellows. This is really neat, and it's open so you can see it, but it's the only one in existence from the first 10 made. This is a pilot model, decapper, and it would bring the bottle over here and grab it, okay? And then the bottle opener would be here, and it would bring it up, and it would decap this bottle. And this would be shut, and there's a glass here. And this cup's going to drop down here, and you can look through this glass and see it, and it would drop right here, and it would pour that bottle in that cup, and it puts the empties up and sends them up, and all of these bottles rotate, and then when the fellow would open up the machine, all these would be empty, and he would fill it back up and take his bottles back with him. And you're looking at, they didn't have premix at that time. So this is the only way to keep Coca-Cola fresh. The only way to transport a Coke when they first started out was in this bottle. See, that bottle's very heavy. They'd wash this bottle out and refill it. See where it says return for deposit? That's not a throwaway bottle. You would be drinking out of the same container that somebody else drank out of. This bottle would be washed with an acid solution, and then they would fill it back up full of Coke and reuse this bottle. It's very heavy, and very heavy bottle.
When did they stop doing the...
97 was the last year that I think that they did the returnables. This was actually a returnable, and they would buy that bottle back. You would get charged 15 cents for that bottle in 97, and then you would give it back, and they would give you 15 cents for the bottle back. But then now they make a bottle that is... now they make a bottle that you don't... That's a non-returnable bottle. That is an 8 ounce. See, 8 ounce. And the reason, and see, that's an 8 ounce. Same bottle here. Look at this. Smaller bottle, but look, 6.5 ounce. But you see what happens is the glass is so thick. This is so thick right here that it only holds 6.5 ounce. So that's where that come from, the 6.5 ounce. But see, that's thin. So they're able to fit more liquid in there. But yeah, that bottle is a throwaway, or you can just recycle it. This is this set here, and I lifted this off of it. It's setting right here. This is the coin mech off of it. I took it off. I've got to refasten it back on, but it's got the coin mech and everything in it. You see it says 5 cents. It goes right here. These two are the only two surviving models that I've found. That's a Mills 98. It's the only complete Mills 98. There are a few Mills 98s out there that are not complete. They have been chopped off at the bottom. And you see that bottom is cold storage. This is the only one I've ever found that's never been chopped up. This is a Mills 47. This is the only Mills 47 I've ever heard of being in existence. There is such a thing called a Mills 47N, which is very similar to this machine. And there are some of those out there. But this is a Mills 98, a Mills 47. This is a 47B. And these four machines right here were the first uprights to sell a drink and take money. They did not give change. They only took a nickel.
What year was that be?
38.
38.
38, 39-ish. Last ones of these were made when the war broke out. And went to war. That was it. Come back from the war, this company was over.
So when you say
Mills International.
Mills is the manufacturer that made these four Coca-Cola.
This is a Mills Novelty Company. And this machine has its refrigeration up here. and it's belt driven. It's got a big wagon wheel looking structure in it. Looks like a car tire and a big old belt on it. All the compressors, everything in this say Mills on it. All the motors, because when these came out, Mills couldn't call General Electric or couldn't call Kelvinator and buy a cooling system for their machine. They had to make it themselves. So they actually put a plant in behind their assembly plant where they were making everything. These are made out of wood inside, by the way. They've got wood insides, and then it's got metal on the front of the wood. And these were all hand assembled on an assembly line, and they made everything. And they made all the refrigeration systems, and it's got their stamping on them. All the motors say Mills on them. So they made everything and put it all together. They've got glass mercury switches in them with mercury in the glass bulbs with wires coming off of them. And when the money is put in, it starts the Ferris wheel. There's a Ferris wheel in this thing that rises up with the bottles in it, and it starts this Ferris wheel, and it comes up and it brings all the bottles up in little carriages, and it'll bring it up, and then it drops the bottle out right here. And what stops the assembly is when the little door flips up, the mercury switch will turn, and it just stops the motor, and then that ends it. So that's how it knows to not vend another bottle. So when it gets a signal from the corn, they made their corn mix, they made everything. I'll show you something funny. This Coca-Cola bottle that called the, it's got looks like a female that has the waist that goes in, looks like it's got a pleated skirt. I think they call it a hobble skirt bottle. It looks like it's got pleats from a lady's skirt. There was a bottle for Coca-Cola that was designed after that. I guess it's Robert Lowry. I don't really know if that's his. I think that's his name, but he was hired by Coca-Cola to design stuff for them. So he designed the bottle, and I read somewhere where it was designed after his girlfriend or his wife or whatever. Well, anyway, he did not like things sticking out on his machines. He liked streamlining everything. So they gave him freedom to do what he wanted to do. And if you notice that all these other machines in here, they have like a flipper on them. See that flipper right here? See that flipper where you get your coin back? They've all got flippers on them, okay? Well, this don't have a flipper. If you lose your coin in these machines, it's got a button that you push to get it out, and the button is like it does not mess up the flow of anything because it was his design. So when it come over here, the coin mech was not a separate entity. The coin mech was actually part of the door. So it was sunk in there, and they didn't have, the coin mech is actually located behind this, and there was not a place to put a spring to allow that button to be submerged. So he's put a screw here, and this is factory, and it says if you lose your nickel, take a second nickel and put it in there and turn that to get your nickel back. But see, that he didn't want a lever on the machine because he said it looked bad. So he put a screw there, and you have to read those directions. See, so you actually in 1942 would have to have two nickels, because you'd have to have an extra nickel, or you'd have to have a pocket knife or something, because if it hung, you'd have to turn it to get your nickel back. But that was for cosmetic. He did not want a little lever sticking out. The reason this one has the refrigeration in the bottom, see, and they made it shorter, and it's called a 47B. But what's cool about it is this is the last year. These would fit on airplanes, and they flew them over, and the servicemen could get a Coca-Cola, and they could put these in the barracks, and they were easy to haul. So those would fit on they could fly those to Germany. So these things went to war, and then after the war was over, Mills become Mills International. And then they made what was called the Mills 65, which is somewhere around here. And these were all extinct, and those were gone. But those are the two on the end are the only two in existence. And you can see this is a deluxe. You can see it on the poster up there. See the deluxe right there? See. Now what's cool? You see this area back here where these hot bottles would go as a display, and the customer would load those machines. You see this display is missing, but it would have had a display here, and you would have taken a hot bottle and you could push it down here, and a cold bottle would come out of here. This actually was had a cooling system in it. See, and it actually kept the drinks cold. You didn't have to put ice in this. But now this is 1930. Okay. Let's see. Wait a minute. Maybe not. Let me check here just a second. Yeah, I think that's 1930. I think it's dated. It is. See the date on it? See, 1930, right there. See the 30? That's the year.
Down here.
Yeah. See 30.
So that means
That's the year.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is 29. Okay. It does not have a. Compressor. It runs off ice, and you see down in here. See the pipes. See, the drinks are in the pipes. And if you were downtown Chicago and you'd had your nails done, your lady had your nails done, you didn't want to stick your hand in ice. And if your child was hollering for a drink, you didn't want to do it. So here you would say, and let's just say this is like number 1, and then here you would have a drink in here, okay? And then you'd come over here, and this is 1 through 8. This is thing's called a liquid carbonic. So you could pull this up right here, and then the bottles are all in there. That's a cold bottle, and this is a hot bottle. Okay, and they're numbered 1 through 8. This is all original machine. And you see that little thing right there, that little diamond? That was a paper label, and it would have said the liquid. Now, before they quit making them, see that's what it looked like. That's actually would have been one from the 40s. This machine's a 29. See, there would have been a little paper label like that, and then there would have been a bottle opener. See, the company had their own bottle opener. This right here, you would push this down right here. See it come out? You never have to touch the ice. And then you'd pay for that. And see, the general store fella that's running it, or downtown New York or wherever it's at, there'd be a cash register, a candy store, or whatever, and then you pay the clerk. And if this started going down, go fill it back up. Put extras right here. This actually has the Coca-Colas in it. It is refrigerated. It's not an upright like those, and it takes a nickel. And you would put a nickel in there, and then the door's mechanical. You could open it up and get a Coke out. That would have had a water bath in it. This would have had water standing around in the Coke. You see that motor right there with the propeller? That would turn and keep the water stirring. That would keep the cold water going around in here in a circle, and it had a water bath in it. Now, this is to my knowledge, and if anybody else has one, I've not seen it. This is to my knowledge the only surviving. This is the first ICO. If you'll notice, this is called a Model 72 ICO, and it is number 1. Okay, not number. It's number 1 Model 72. This is Model 120, Model 72. Model 60, I'm thinking, and the way I've designed, I was able to put 60 bottles in this. This one holds 72 bottles. This one holds 120 bottles. So this is half of that. This is a 60. You'll notice it's smaller. It has a tag on the top of it because in 1925, this company was still in Atlanta, Georgia. So the tag says Atlanta, Georgia, patent pending. They hadn't got a patent yet. And then there's a picture of it with those people standing around it. And then this is number 2, and that's number 3. That is 1, 2, and 3. Now there are some of these out there, but this one is number 1 of 2. You can see that is the original label. And it was missing the bottom when I found it. This one was all complete. This is number 1, and it was all there. This one was missing the bottom, so I had to refabricate the bottom. The top is all original. The paper label's all original. Everything, the tag is on it. It says patent pending. Every bit of that. But I had to get it back to life because somebody had stole the bottom off of it. And then those are going to be Nintendo Ataris, and we're just going to put them. They can come in and play them for free. They make those today, and they can see what it was like for the first arcade games. These machines here you're looking at stuff from 1960s up into 1970s. You can see right here. This is 79. See the bell bottoms? See? Everybody's in bell bottoms. That would be 79. And then I'll go up. I've actually got some bell bottoms hanging on the wall over there. And these were made, I don't know if they make these anymore or not, but Vendo made these, and these were made for theme parks, and they kept the candy cold so it wouldn't melt. You're looking at something from, I think, 2000. So these are already 23 years old. And you'd get a box of candy in your theme park. and you could use these. And I'm probably going to run these. And this is I'm thinking this is 85. I think this is around 82, 83. It's a pizza machine. Keeps all the pizzas frozen. It's got 3 flavors in it. It's got a cheese, pepperoni, sausage, pepperoni. Take $1.25. Put $1.25 in it. There's a microwave behind there, and it would say deposit $1.25. Pick your flavor. You push this, and it dropped the frozen pizza where that door is. Okay, and then you get that out, and then this would automatically come up, and it would ring a bell, and then you put your thing in there, and then you would hit press to cook. The door would go down, and it would cook your pizza, and you could watch it turning in there, and you could cook it. It has just a microwave in it, and then it would ding, and the door would get up, and you take it with you. Now the pizza came in a little pan. You cannot buy these pizzas anymore in the little pan, but you can get the little Tony's pizzas in the plastic, so it won't vend them anymore because it has to have the pizza in that pan, and it won't vend it. But at one time, they had it fixed to where if you bought this machine at a show, you bought the product from them. And so now that they're gone, the machine does work. I've worked it, but you can put one pizza in it and it'll drop it. But it's cool, and this lights up. And then these are all RCs, so we're going to do like a little bar here. We'll put stools here. They can sit here, and then in here will be a dance floor. And then these machines will change color. Kind of made a big area in here for people to come. And so this will be like a little dance floor area. And do that. And that gives them some room to run around, stuff like that. And we had some tables done. We'll have some little tables done, and see, they'll change color. See that table change color? I'm gonna do some smaller ones. We put our name on it. See it turn color? That is a big enough table to where you can sit and eat a pizza and drink a soda and play Monopoly or whatever and not get your board wet. And so that's our bar outside's designed like that too, and it changes colors. And technology is great, so you can get LEDs and put in these things. That is a Jacob's Pepsi. Holds 56 bottles. Had a lighted front. And that was used in Hickory had that one, and I found it. That's a cool machine. Built for Pepsi Cola.
What's the farthest you've ever went to get a machine?
California. That's where that decapper come from.
Oh, yeah. Did you go out there to look at it or buy it online?
I went out, no. There was no online. There was no online in 97. I think it was 97. There was no internet. There was no online in 97. You didn't have anything. It wasn't, in 97, you had a computer, but there was no pictures. You would go on, when I hunted it on the computer, it was an old computer, and you would, it would just be like want ads. There was no photos because it wasn't like it is today. It was just a whole long list of some page of some newspaper somewhere with want ads. I couldn't find anything on the internet. There wasn't enough of these people did not have their stuff on the internet in 97. These people that collected these didn't even know how to work a computer in 97. You're looking at, there's machines in here that boy in that picture over there from 1925, I'm thinking he was 10, so he would be 115 years old, wouldn't he? So he's no longer here. But these people that own these machines, when I was in my 20s, that was 89. So the people that own these machines, here you got these people were much older than me, because these machines are from the 40s and the 30s. So they didn't know how to work computers, because it's still Greek to them. And in 89, even telephones, you couldn't even get, cell phones and all that was just starting. They had pagers and stuff like that. So the internet was no help. And there was an eBay. Now eBay came along, and I was able to get some stuff off of eBay that was really good. I got a machine over here off eBay, and they spelled Coca-Cola wrong on eBay, and eBay would not let you change it. But I still had to pay a lot for it. But they spelled Coca-Cola with an O here. And so it was Coco. No, they spelled Coca-Cola. They spelled, this was an A, and they put an O. And it's a rare drink machine over here, and I'll show it to you. And the fella that I bought it from, he put it on eBay. He paid a nickel for it. But I ended up having to fight for it on eBay, and it cost about I think it was $6,500, and that would have been years ago. But he was a farmer, and it was in Owensboro, Kentucky, and he didn't know what it was, and nobody would bid on it, and they were buying farm equipment, and it had 5 cents on it, and this guy in the auction says, whoever bids a nickel gets it, and so somebody raised his hand for him, and he got it, and he had to move it, and he gets it home, and the neighbor says, I know what that is. That's pretty rare. You can put it on eBay and sell it. So I found it on eBay by misspelling Coca-Cola, which you could do that back then because people would do that, and it was on there a typo, and so I thought, well, maybe nobody will find it. Well, there's a lot of other people misspelling Coca-Cola, so I ended up having to pay almost $6,000 for it. But now I don't think it will bring this, but I've heard stories of these things bringing $15,000 to $25,000. But they're only built 500 of these, and it's a double door drink machine. They put them on gas station islands, so whichever side the car pulled up on, they could get a Coke from either side.
Okay, yeah, I saw that when I was walking through over here earlier.
Yes, but it was done. It was done by Cavalier in Tennessee. They did it for Coca-Cola, and it was never intended to. What happened to these machines? And there's one in a museum up in Greensboro. What happened to these machines is when they made them, there was a place for signs on the top, and one sign would say Coca-Cola, and the other sign would say orange. Well, a lot of these got sold in the South, so they'd end up and they'd say colored, or it would say white on one side and colored on the other, and they would put the signs on there. And back then, you could actually buy those signs at hardware stores. And so they would go get this machine from Coca-Cola, and they would put these signs on it. And then Coca-Cola went out and seen this and said, "Oh, we don't like this. This is bad. We don't like this." So, from what the story is that was the only run they ever made. Those machines disappeared. Don't know where they went, but they disappeared. And there's about 15 to 17 of them has been found today that they could not find.
Let's look at it just a second.
And I'll show you.
Don't
Yeah,
you?
and but they, all I know is that they disappeared, and
You think Coke might have destroyed them all once pulled them off?
possibly. Well, see, the thing about it is these collectors were running around in the 80s, and there was really no book on anything. See, nothing. You could still do a book in the late 80s and the early 90s, and because the internet had not eliminated all books. But you could still do a book. So this is one of them right here. This is one of the 500 that were made, and you see it's got a door on both sides. See, so this could stand on the gas station island, and you could get a Coke from either side. It shares the same compressor. And this holds 102 baby Coke bottles. And yeah, and you're looking at that thing from the side. Now they made a one door. See, there's a one door. See the one door? And see, it's got a serpentine belt inside it. Here. See that belt? So you put a bottle in here. Put a bottle in. Let's say there's a bottle right there. See, now watch this. That. See? You put a 10 cents in it. See here? See, watch this. See that rotate like that? And then that matches that. Okay, so if I put a dime in it, it lets me get one drink. See, if I open this little door over here, I'm looking at an empty hole. See that? You leave that hole empty. See where that arrow is? Okay, so then there's a bottle right here. Okay? So you get one Coke for a dime. Now that's got 2 belts in it. 2 coin mechs. But the story goes is that one of these showed up at a Chicago show and nobody believed it was real. And everybody said, that's fake. This man's faked this. Because it's not in the book. It's not in the Coke book that was printed. It's not in there. And they said they faked it. Well, when he shows up with it, the first thing they did was call Cavalier. They called this company. This company was still in business at that time. And they called Cavalier. It says Cavalier on the front. Cavalier said, that's a fake. We didn't make that. Or we don't have a comment on that. And we don't want to comment on that. So it aggravated everybody. So Cavalier went out of business in 2001, I'm thinking. They went out of business sometime around 9/11. They just couldn't hang on. And when they went out of business, there was a big auction. And a lot of the collectors went up there to see what was left. And Some of them got into the rooms where they kept all the records and stuff like this, and some of them got into the rooms, and there was a book in there, and it had all the machines they had made, and that was in the book, and it confirmed that they had made 500 is how many they made, and all of the serial numbers that on the ones that have been found have been from 500 and down. That one's number 284, and it just happens to have a stamp on the side of it. But all of these that were produced, something happened to them. I don't know where they're at now. You still see them. They turn up very rarely. That I got off the internet. That was one of my internet machines, which was I was able to find it kind of early on. And like I say, I bid against some people on it. I don't know who I was bidding against. It was very early years with eBay, and I got it, and I just drove up there to Owensboro, Kentucky, and bought it from the guy. But he gave a nickel for it, and he thought he didn't want to move it. But then he ended up putting it on eBay, and he got good money out of it. And I was glad to get it for that, because I had just started looking for them because it wasn't in the book, and I had heard one showed up at Chicago, and I had heard that somebody that collected memorabilia from the South had went up and paid $15,000 for it. That's what the rumor was, but I wasn't at the show. I don't know. That's what I heard. So then I started looking for one, and then here this thing shows up. And then there was some people that bid against me, but it didn't bring $15,000. But it's
Now, how did you
they're
get
hard
that
to find.
shipped to you once you bought it on eBay?
I had to go drive and get it. It was in Kentucky.
But you said you bought another one in California.
Yeah, I had to drive. I had to fly there and get it.
You flew there and rented
That's
the
that
vehicle?
decapper. I flew there and then got a rental car and went and met the man and put it on a tractor trailer and had it shipped back here.
It was quite an adventure to go get that, huh?
Yeah, I wasn't. I couldn't. You had to see something like that. You had to just drive there and crate it up. That's the only surviving pilot. That was a pilot model. They made 10 of those pilot models. They called them pilot models. The serial number on the side says pilot model, PM decapper, and they built those. First 10 built. That's the only surviving one of the first 10 built. It was caught in a fire, and but it's all the metal has been straightened back on, and it does work. But you have to stand and help it. But it does work. You have to stand, and it'll gum up and stall out, and you can push it a little bit, and it'll decap the bottle, and it'll pour the drink in a cup, and you can help it along, and it'll go on around. If it was disassembled and oiled up, all of that, did put a paint job on, did work just fine. But it's all there. I did have to have the motor rebuild on it. Motor rebuild on it, it runs 6 RPM. Runs that, and the bottle just comes up, and it just pours that drink. It's real delicate with it. It pours it. And then there was a book that came with that one. It was a book I had and a manual. There's another fella that got some of these, and I let him copy my manual, but we found the manual for it. I don't think there's a manual for the Victor Cooler Grill right here, but there was one. Victor, that company was up in Hagerstown, Maryland, and there was a manual up there, but the fella that seen it didn't save it. But there was a manual for this up there that showed everything that you could get for it. I do have some literature on this. These are, remember I showed you that Pepsi Jacobs. See all the Jacobs here? See, this is all the models of the Jacobs.
Now, Jacob is the manufacturer?
Nobody really knows what happened to that company. The information is lost what happened to that company, but Jacob made these, and this company disappeared.
Oh, okay.
Nobody knows who bought them out.
I see how it's rounded. It kind of looks like a mailbox almost, don't it?
Yep. That one holds 144 bottles. This one holds 26 bottles. This one holds 35 bottles. That's the hardest one to find. This is a conglomeration of 3 of these. And Coca-Cola, they had a paint shop or whatever, and they do their own little stuff. So they've taken a 26 cabinet, put a 144 cap catcher on the front, and put a refrigeration in it, and it actually opens up like a refrigerator door, and the Cokes are sitting there. But Vic Jacobs never made that, but some little Coke bottler somewhere has got that and had extra parts, and he says, we're just going to make something up for an account, and that's what they've done. And
this machine right here now, has this been restored? Or
no, that's original.
That looks almost...
I just showed you. It's got serpentine in it. See that one that had the serpentine in it? That's what that is.
That's
got
an excellent
serpentine
shape.
in it.
I guess it's pretty rare to find one in that type of shape.
I'll tell you a funny story on that. He's about my age too, and so he's probably in his 50s now. But there is a mill over called Lenny's Mill, and I think it's still there, and they make cornmeal. And this guy's was a friend of mine. His name was Shannon. I was friends with him and his dad, and they would always hunt drink machines. And then one day they called me, and they said, "Oh, we got one. We got one. You know, we want to show it to you." So they come over in the pickup truck, and they've got this thing laying on its back in the pickup truck, water fountain and all. And it's got factory rollers on it. Those are factory rollers that you would buy. They stick out in the front to keep the machine from being top heavy, because when you open up the door, it's top heavy setting up that high. So that's why those come out the front like that. But they brought this over there, and we got into it. We got a key. He said, "I need a key. I can't get in it." So we found a key, and we opened it up, and it was gutted. It had no insides in it. It was all gone. And my heart sank, and his heart sank, and he said, "I'm so aggravated." He said, I was going to sell it to you. And I was going to pay him $1,200 for it. And we opened it up because it was so nice. We opened it up and it was gutted. He said, "That makes me so mad." I said, "Well, how much did you give for it?" He said, $250. I said, "Well, I'll give you $250 for it. Just look at it." And he said, "No, I'm taking it back." I said, "They're not going to take that back." I said, "They're not going to take that back." And he said, "They'll take it back." He said, "They told me it worked." And he put it in his truck and drove back to Lenny's Mill, and whoever that old man was sitting there said, and he went in and he said, you told me a story. This is his story telling me. He said, "You told me a story." He said, "You told me this thing works, and it don't have any insides in it. And I took it over to the guy that repairs it, and there's no insides in it." And he says, "Well, you stupid, left the insides laying up top. I told you I had them out. And they're laying up there, and you just left them." And he went, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah, you didn't listen to me." And he goes up there, and there's all the insides and all the guts sitting there in a box, because people would take the insides out of these things and hang deer in them. So the deer hunters would go and they'd kill a deer, and this is large enough to hang a deer in. So they would hang a deer in these things because they quit using them, and that would keep their deer fresh until or their deer meat fresh. So this had deer meat in it. So he brought all the guts, and we washed it out and put all the parts back in it. So it's a functioning machine now, and they're all in there. But
Well, did you get it for $250?
no, I had to pay him $1,200. But see, he was going to make $1,000, and but when it was gutted, I said, I ain't buying that for that. Not in it gutted. But he went back, and the man just said, "Go up there and get the guts." And then I had one of these that was just like this that came out of Columbia, South Carolina, and it was on the lady's front porch, and her husband was gone hunting, and she called me, and she said, "I've got a machine I'll sell you for $50. And I went over there, and it was one of these, and it was sitting on the porch, and I opened it up, and it was gutted. And it had a deer antler in it. It had an antler in the thing. And, hey there! And so, anyway, she said the guts are underneath the house. So I crawled underneath the house in the mud and got the guts, and I gave her $50 for the machine. And I just hung the guts were muddy. I left the deer antler in it. I hung the guts in there, and it was muddy, and left them in there and locked it up, and it was in my garage. And then this fella comes along, and he buys it, and I sold it to him for $200. And he bought it, and he took it to a paint shop, and they didn't open it up. They left it locked up, and the man painted it from the outside. And he took it to an antique mall in Boone and put it for sale for $3,500 and never opened it. It had the deer antler in it and all the mud and all the guts. It was only restored on the outside. And some lady bought it and hauled it to Florida. And she opened it up when she got to Florida, and it had a deer antler in it and the guts. And a lot of people knew me that I worked on these machines. So this lady at this antique mall, because she called the lady that bought it, called this lady at this antique mall and said, "I'm suing you. I'll give you $3,500 for a machine." Now this is over a 15, 20-year period. "I'll give you $3,500 for a machine that came off of one of your dealers out of your booth, and we just opened it up, and I'm going to send you a picture of it, and it's full of mud and it's got a deer horn in it." And so the lady said, no, it was restored. The guy swore it was restored. She said, "I'm telling you it's not." She said, "I'm going to send you a picture of it." Well, they had a falling out, obviously. And she said she's not paying her for it. And she goes after the dealer. So I get a phone call from this lady in Florida. And she looks me up. And she calls me and she starts telling me this story about a machine that she had bought in a local antique mall in Boone. And she says, I said, "Was it muddy inside?" And she said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" I said, "Did it have a deer antler laying in the bottom of it?" She said, "Yeah." And she actually thought I was the one that had crapped her when I told her that. And I said, I sold that machine. I said, I'm going to tell you where it come from. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, but it left my garage with the deer antler in it and the muddy belt. And I said, the guy painted it and never opened it. And so I don't know what she ever did. But it was funny how it's such a small world. And but now keep in mind, this is the one that they made with the double door. So you see, that's a single door. So that's called a 51. And then if it had a double door, it would be a 102. So that's a Cavalier 102. So that's a 51. That's a Canadian box. See the pretty chrome pieces on the side? That would have been used. That was built. It was used in Canada, made for Coca-Cola, and that's where those were used at.
So you're not actually quite open here. You're still working on this.
No, I gotta get the rest of my power run, and we just put for our picture frames. You know, they give away all those picture frames. The hotels have all those picture frames, and they just throw those things in the garbage because they get taken down all the time. So I ended up getting those picture frames. So we put record albums in them from the 80s, and we had a bunch of record albums. So we put record albums in them to hang on the wall since we're going to be like a little club. And that's going to be cool. And then we're just going to sell soda. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do teas and chocolate yoo-hoo and just whatever, and let Domino's actually over here at local in the area said that they'll do our pizzas for us. And see, they're just right beside us, so you can, with the way things are now, you can just order your pizza and they'll bring it to your table. And on weekends, sometimes they'll just bring a pizza to your table and they'll just bring it in here. You just pay them for it online. See these lamps that we're going to use? We found these lamps. We've got to get some more. They charge the kids' cell phones, and they like those. So they have like a plug-in jack, so they can bring their cord in with them, and they can plug into those lamps and charge their cell phones. So we're going to put outlets, and we're going to run those around through there, and then put this place in the dark. That's what we're going to do.
So I noticed when I pulled up, I saw this water tower right here, and it's got a name on there about. Is that your?
That was the museum, but we're going to change that to the Electricola Cafe.
You're going to change that up there, and
yeah, we'll change that. The old sign was when it was a museum, and we're just going to change it all to the Electricola Cafe because we're going to vend soda.
So Joel was saying you had this other building over here that you repaired them in.
No, I'll just use that building to keep these running. Basically, what I'll do.
Do you still work on them for other people, or
no?
Just yourself, just your collection.
Yeah, and then just my own self, and we'll that's our service department. So now to keep these things running, that's what we'll have to fix them. So we'll have to come over there and take them over there and fix them to keep them running, and to keep. I got enough parts to keep them going because you can't get parts for some of them anymore. But I got enough parts to keep them going for at least my lifetime.
Well, maybe next time I come to North Carolina, maybe you can let us see you work on one.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see one of them being worked on. Look at that. And
all right, Alan, I really appreciate your time. It's been a great privilege and honor to come and see this collection that you've put together over the last 30 years or so. And you're doing a great thing for the community here. It's a non-alcoholic bar for people to come and hang out, and all they have to do is buy the soda. They can come in and hang out in the facility. So is it open any right now?
Bring your own food. Yeah, on the weekends we open it up. Now the front porch is open 24 hours a day.
Front porch.
It never closes.
Never closes.
It's open 7 days a week.
Well,
but then now in the evenings we'll get somebody in here, and we usually open this.
Yeah.
We'll open this in the evenings.
That people just come in. Well, I've noticed
they just come in there. They've been trying to walk in while we're doing the video, and they're waiting on change or something. But they do. It's going to get to the point where this just stays open in here.
Yeah. Well, you're a very trusting person. I noticed you got change right here. You tell people just to put your money in and get what change.
Well, as long as it's there, they do a pretty good job. We thought we were going to be trusting, and we put a jar outside with $10 of quarters in it. And I said, well, okay. I said we're going to try this. So we put $10 in quarters, and we put a little sign on the jar, and it said, make your own change. There's $10 in this jar. Please do not cheat the system. And if you need to make change, we'll keep up with the jar. Please take out what you put in. That lasted about an hour, maybe not even a half hour. We had to run an errand. We come back. We had no money in the jar, no bills in the jar, and several drinks, half drunk, that they had bought and put out on the counter. So that jar come off. That jar didn't work, and so it didn't last. But in here it does pretty good, and we kind of know what's in that jar. So, but yeah, they'll come in and they'll put their money in there and make their own change. And we trust them.
Well, I appreciate this time that you come. You had to leave work. You work for Dr. Pepper still, and
I do. Well, I'm not. I didn't leave work. I'm on a break. I have I have a morning shift that I did, and then I don't have to do the evening shift. Somebody else will do the evening shift.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming over to meet us and showing us around, and we'll be talking to you again next time.
Okay, thank you.